I'd broken up with Josh after 6 months of dating. He'd been absent, bike racing in Idaho, New Mexico, the Dominican Republic. I couldn't compete with the coaches and the carbon frames. The only bike I owned at the, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? The only bike I owned at the time was a shiny red electric cruiser adorned with hibiscus flowers. But the breakup grabbed his attention, and we quickly agreed to work on our communication and common interests and give it another shot. I had work to do with the Ben Lapine School District, so we packed up Josh's bike and headed to Central Oregon for a few days. Each day as I headed off to work, Josh hopped on his bike to discover a new route through the Cascades. Though it was late May and in the 70s, it had been a record year for snowfall in Central Oregon. Mount Bachelor, Broken Top, the Three Sisters, and all of their alpine cousins were still dressed in their winter white. Josh would find remote roads through these beauties and circle home after several hours of intense pedaling each day. On our final day in Central Oregon, as I headed off to work, Josh's plan was to check out a new 65-mile loop through the mountains. I got a call from him late that afternoon asking if I would meet him at the Mount Bachelor Ski Resort parking lot. He was tired, losing light, and would need warmer clothes and more food and water soon. After I had been hanging out in the parking lot for a bit, Josh called again. He'd encountered some road construction and some snowy roads and was a bit behind. Over the next few hours, there would be many, many more calls. But before we get into that, let me pause for a little context about ways in which Josh and I differ a bit. As a natural warrior and an outdoor enthusiast, I like to be prepared. Water, check. First aid kit, check. Snow shovel, boots, and chains in the back of my car through April, check. Avalanche training, yep, check. I lost a friend when he fell climbing Denali, and I've had some close calls in the wilderness myself. Those experiences have reinforced my inherent safety slant. That day, I was prepared not for the mountains, but for work. I was wearing a suit and heels with no change of clothes. So how does Josh differ from me? For starters, he does not own a suit. We battle about how many holes and stains are acceptable in his t-shirts. The correct answer is none. Josh finds comfort in chaos. I find peace in order. I filed my taxes last week. Got my refund today, yeah. I hope that Josh files his 2015 taxes sometime this year. I'm the kind of person who volunteers to tell a story in front of 300 people. Josh is the guy in the seat in front of you who's slumped down right now, mortified that I'm telling a story about him in front of 300 people. Yeah. Josh is funkadelic. I am Patsy Cline. Josh loves finding treasures in those free bins on the side of the road. I love taking said treasures to the Goodwill. Josh is from Boston. I am from Portland. We call it East Coast Type B meets West Coast Type A. Seems to work. So back to Josh's sunny afternoon ride through the mountains, which had gone awry through a series of unforeseen circumstances. He had turned from riding to hiking through 5 feet deep snow. He was wearing road cycling shoes, and some of you know those shoes well. You know that they're not designed for walking even into the cafe from the bike rack, let alone trying to trudge through deep snow. Somehow, he still had a charged phone and cell coverage throughout this. So he would call with updates, and he was calm. He thought he was close, and that he could break into a nearby cabin if need be. I know the area a bit and thought, there aren't any cabins around. I don't think he's that close. I pondered daylight and the dropping alpine temperature and Josh's lack of food and water and thought to myself, so at what point do I call search and rescue? As the sunset group of snowmobilers rolled into the parking lot, wrapping up their day with a few beers, sheepishly I marched through the snow in my heels to ask if any of them had seen a cyclist out on the trails. A mountain biker in this? No. No, a road cyclist. Silence and eyebrows. As the last bits of light vanished, Josh called again. He estimated he still had 2 long miles of snow yet to wade through. I tried to mask my panic. I hung up and approached a beer-guzzling snowmobiler, a smiley, burly type with flowing red locks. Would Braveheart consider taking his steed off the trailer for a search and rescue mission? He smiled and obliged. I put him on the phone with Josh, and soon he was buzzing into the backcountry in search of my lycra-clad love. I took a deep breath, said a little prayer to the snow gods, and I waited a very long 20 minutes until the buzz came back into range. Apparently, I missed the best part of this entire quandary, which was that right before Braveheart swooped Josh up, he landed a sweet jump on his snowmobile. Then he checked out Josh's neon attire and his overall predicament and said, "Man, I like your style." Soon I was so grateful to behold a shivering 150-pound Josh clinging to the burly Braveheart while shouldering his bike for dear life. Josh said little other than to thank Braveheart profusely. He was clearly embarrassed about the course of his misadventure. So I pulled a $20 bill out of my pocket, tried to offer it to Braveheart, said I wanted to contribute to the parking lot beer fund. He shook his head no and said, "Just pay it forward." Josh and I rolled out of the parking lot feeling like naive city kids, waving our goodbyes to Braveheart and crew, so thankful we had escaped calamity. Of course, Josh has his own version of this story. If you're curious, just Google, "Yes, I'm that jackass, how I horribly underestimated spring in the Cascades." Fast forward 8 years. Josh and I have had plenty of communication practice. We're still practicing. I've learned that I can't drop huge proclamations or probing questions on him and expect an immediate response. He's learned that a quick check-in when he's been traveling or has been riding longer than expected goes a long way with me. He's also learned that all it really takes to make me happy is for him to sing or dance every day. He's challenged me to be a deeper thinker, a stronger environmentalist, and a better writer. He's somehow managed to significantly enhance my grammar, East Coast, and also substantially increase my use of the F-bomb and other choice language, also East Coast. He's shown me what loyalty looks like. He's still trying to teach me how to take a nap. Last year, Josh took his first break from road racing in 14 years to smell the proverbial roses. As for me, that electric cruiser is long gone. Shortly after that misadventure, I bought my first commuter, then a road bike, a carbon cross bike, a hardtail mountain bike, and the prize of my fleet, a fair trade, organic, locally built, my exact dimensions, steel, breadwinner, whole shot. Yeah. She's shiny red, just like that old Electra, and her name is Sparks and Fire. Remember how I detested the coaches and the carbon frames? Now I run the Hi-Fi Sound Cycling Components team. Last fall, I won my first cyclocross race series. Thanks. It's only because Janelle Bickford, who's out in the audience tonight, didn't show up for a couple races, so let's be honest. Thanks, Janelle, I owe that to you. Yeah. My bikes have accompanied me now to Maui, California, Colorado, Texas, Massachusetts, Italy, and Croatia. 2 years ago, we were back in Central Oregon. Josh was off racing, so I headed up the mountain on a ride of my own. Many miles out in the wilderness, it occurred to me that I was on Josh's notorious route. Eventually, I approached a road closed sign. Although there wasn't really snow directly on the road, and it looked benign. It was a gorgeous spring day, and I was so tempted to keep going. But alas, Braveheart was nowhere in sight. So I turned around and pedaled home.